Hello everyone. I would like to introduce you to Thelma. Thelma seems like a normal child under the care of her seemingly normal parents. But despite her innocence, there is a darkness she cannot control. What she sees as simple play produces some dire consequences to those around her. Yet she is none the wiser. Join me in witnessing how Thelma's story unfolds. Thelma is the daughter of Trond and Uni, and she's raised under a very strict Christian household. She just recently started university and is her first time staying away from home, so naturally, her parents are worried and would call her every day to check up on her. And their concern took a valid turn when Thelma suddenly suffered a seizure in the university library. But strange things are happening around them. Since it was her first time having it, the school nurse left it up to Thelma whether to tell her parents or not. She decided not to. Afterwards, Anya introduces herself as the girl who was at the library with her and asks if she's okay now. Anya sends Thelma a friend request shortly, and Thelma checks it out and feels a deep sense of longing. Trond and Uni visits Thelma, but their dinner didn't end nicely when Thelma mocks their faith. Back in her student lodging, Thelma admits that she felt jealous whenever she sees other girls with their friends or boyfriends. Trond appreciates the honesty but hinted that he's monitoring Thelma's Facebook page and her newly added friends there. Her parents left the next day, and while studying hard in the library one night, she receives a notification from Anya's post. Curious, Thelma decides to head to Anya's location. Anya runs into Thelma, who thought this was all just a coincidence. She invites Thelma back to her table and she gets introduced to Anya's circle of friends. They all had an open discussion about Thelma's strict Christian background, and everything was fine. Her parents' call rings like clockwork, but Thelma ignores it and continues to have fun. But she calls them back later that night to assure them that she's fine. Thelma goes to bed and had another strange dream. In it, she strongly desired to see Anya again, and when she wakes up suddenly and checks outside, there she is. Thelma goes out to meet her, and Anya is just as confused as she is. Thelma suffers another round of seizure, and after it has passed, Anya decides to stay with Thelma and keep her company. As they both lie in bed, Thelma starts to understand where her sense of longing is coming from. The next morning, Thelma was asking Anya how she even arrived if she didn't know Thelma's address or received an invitation. Anya admitted that she had no idea as she was drunk last night. Afterwards, the two get close each passing day. Thelma shares a story where her father would hold her hand above a candle as a child and tell her that the pain she feels from the fire is every day in hell. He would release Thelma before her skin burns, but Anya is shocked regardless. Their friendship has reached a point where Thelma gets invited to see the ballet together with Anya's mother. After they all settle into their seats, Thelma wonders where Anya's boyfriend is, and she confesses that they broke up recently. During the performance, Anya gets a bit intimate with Thelma, which slowly starts her seizure. She tried to repress it, and as she does, she unknowingly moved the sculpture above. It sways dangerously, but Thelma excuses herself before it becomes a tragedy. Anya follows Thelma outside and kisses her passionately, but she suddenly gets terrified by her own feelings and leaves. She immediately heads home to repent. She calls her father, but she couldn't tell him what happened and only tells him that she drank a couple of beers earlier, to which he tells Thelma that it's fine. But that did nothing to ease her guilt as she tries to strongly reconnect to her faith. At a house party, she makes an obvious attempt to ignore Anya. When she confronts Thelma a little later, Thelma answers all her questions quite dismissively. Shortly after, Thelma gets an MRI scan to check if she has any brain tumors, but the doctor assures her that there's none. But this test, however, doesn't show why Thelma is having epileptic seizures, and she was advised to book time with an epilepsy clinic. The doctor tells Thelma that her journal indicates that Thelma actually first had an epileptic seizure when she was 6 years old but was diagnosed as a mental breakdown. She was subsequently put on strong antipsychotic drugs, perhaps too strong for a child her age. Thelma admits that she didn't know and remember, and it was her father, who is a general practitioner, who always takes care of things. A flashback shows Thelma as a child, and she has a baby brother. Thelma now gets less attention from her parents now that there's a new addition to the family. She was forced to play by herself, but the constant crying of the baby starts to annoy Thelma a bit. She closes her eyes and concentrates hard on what she wants. And all of a sudden there is peace and quiet. Her baby brother is gone. Uni comes back only to find the crib empty. She immediately suspects Thelma. Yet when asked where her brother is, Thelma has no idea. Uni presses her some more, and Thelma thinks of the sofa, and just like that, the baby reappears underneath it. Thelma's epilepsy test begins, and it is quite tedious. Firstly, she is required to stay in the clinic to monitor her brain activity as she undergoes a seizure. However, the doctors need to invoke it first. Their process is simple: ask Thelma uncomfortable questions until her mind subconsciously resists to them. They question her stress in school to no effect, but when they question her about her friends in school, Thelma immediately thinks of Anya. This prompts a reaction to her brainwaves, and the doctors continue pressing. Strange things then start to happen, which also happen to Anya. But Thelma still strongly resists the urge to admit that she desires Anya and violently tries to remove Anya from her mind. She visualizes her world without Anya, and her powers made it come true. After the tests, Thelma tries to call Anya but lands on voicemail. The result of the tests baffles doctors. Thelma's seizures aren't related to epilepsy, and they think that it's a non-epileptic seizure brought upon by her mind resisting things such as past trauma. The doctor mentioned Thelma's grandmother and how she's still admitted to a mental hospital, but Thelma didn't know and was told by her parents that she died when Thelma was still a child. Later that night, she looks more into psychogenic-induced epilepsy, and the results come back with demonic possessions and witch hunts. So she decides to finally visit her grandmother at the mental institution. Thelma finds her in a catatonic state, and the nurse arrives and explains that her grandmother had been here for years for reasons unknown. The nurse explains further that Thelma's grandmother was on strong medications and has been delusional every day ever since her husband disappeared all those years ago. She blamed herself and deeply believes that she has the power to make things happen. Thelma goes home with a terrifying realization that she has inherited her powers and that she's responsible for Anya's disappearance. She tries to carry on with her life as normally as she could and ignores Anya's mother. But the guilt catches up to her when she suddenly gets seizures while swimming. She recovers shortly but is horrified to learn that she's trapped underwater. Thelma struggles with all her might and escapes. She then decides to visit Anya's place to investigate and finds a few strands of her hair stuck within the glass window. Thelma is devastated and calls her parents to admit everything, that her friend disappeared and can't stop thinking that it's her fault. And so her parents invited her back home so she can take a break, but the moment she gets back, they sit her down for a serious chat. Thelma explained the test results, yet her parents are not the least bit surprised. She starts to feel really sleepy and Trond admits that he put something in Thelma's drink to calm her down. He then warned her that they knew what's happening to her and that the truth of her past will hurt bad. Another flashback shows Uni bathing the baby and then suddenly disappearing again the moment her back was turned. Trond heads straight to Thelma's room to question her, and again she has no idea what's going on. The two continue to look for the baby in the house when Trond notices Thelma walking out on the snow. She points out in the distance and Trond runs like mad, but he was too late no matter how hard he cries. Shortly after, Uni tries to take her own life but instead survives and becomes a paraplegic. Thelma is shocked beyond repair. Trond explains that she has the power to make things happen by willing it. And so begins her tireless routine of antidepressants and repentance. Thelma is tearfully remorseful for what she did to Anya and confessed that she loved her, and Anya felt the same way. Yet Trond tells Thelma that she's delusional and Anya couldn't possibly love her if she knew what Thelma really is. That night, Uni and Trond discuss their next steps and Thelma's future. What if she does it again, they think. Trond decides to put Thelma under stronger medication and she becomes near zombie-like as a result. This went on for a few more days until she asks her father if this is what he did to her grandmother as well. Instead, he tells her to go to sleep. He takes a boat and travels for a while to clear his head, but it seems that Thelma's powers has grown beyond the medications. Trond spontaneously combusts and tries to save himself, but he stood no chance against the supernatural. Thelma wakes up and heads straight to the lake to save her father, but instead finds Anya and saves her instead. Thelma wakes up back in the lake and discovers that she has the power to heal now. As one final act of kindness, she heals her mother, enabling her to walk again. Thelma leaves her house for good and doesn't look back despite Uni's desperate cries. Back in university, Thelma meets up with Anya and the two go back to class together. And we've reached the end of our story. This has been a metaphorical coming-of-age story, but let me know what you think in the comments section below. Thank you for reaching this far, and do leave a like and subscribe. It really helps a lot. See you on the next one.